so I can't think of a better way than to kick off the next 2 days than by learning from someone who has been on this journey with us since the very beginning. She's a leader who has not only transformed her own community, but she has helped shape this entire movement that we're all a part of. She's a trailblazer and a truth teller and a force to be reckoned with if you know her. She is a founder of one of the longest running cradle-to-career place-based partnerships in the country. And she is my dear friend, Susan Dawson, founder of E3 Alliance in Austin, Texas. So I think you all know Susan has just published this extraordinary book. Uh-oh, I knew that was going to be a problem. Okay. Susan has published this extraordinary book, and I am so honored to be able to have this time, all right, necklace, behave, have this time to really get you all to hear from the wisdom that she has written in this book. We have copies of this book for every single one of you. So if you haven't picked up your copy, they are out front. Susan's going to be out there after this plenary, and you can speak with her. I'm sure you're going to want to after this plenary. But make sure you pick up your copy if you haven't already. And so with that, Susan, let's begin.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Right. Well, Susan, I said when we were talking in the green room back, we've known each other for quite some time. And, I was like, to kick things off, you made the suggestion, let me be honest. You made the suggestion. You're like, ask me something that no one knows about you. And so many of us in this room, we know you. So what is one thing that you can tell us, just to kick off this conversation, that no one knows about you?
Well, I'm not sure no one knows.
Okay.
But I guess one thing I could say is that I was drum major of the Princeton Band, which has far less to do with musical ability than how much beer you can consume. So that's my claim to fame.
Excellent, excellent. So this book, let's talk about the book. I had a chance, thank you for the privilege of getting to read an early copy of this. And I remember you saying, I'm not finished yet because I want to add more examples and case studies, but that was something that really compelled me, is how many practical examples. So I know one of the things that we love about our convening is that we really get into the practical examples, and
Yes.
You have 9 case studies in this book, so 9 really clear examples in the back of this book. And I would love for you to talk us through one of them, and in particular, one of the focal areas of this year's conference is really thinking about pathways to
Right.
opportunity for young people, and you have a great case study there. So let's start there.
Sure, I'd love to. So everything at E3 starts with data. We collected a lot of data on what was happening in terms of transitions from secondary to post-secondary into industry and workforce. And based on that data, in Central Texas, as in much of the country, the largest gap in terms of numbers of students is in the healthcare sector. But in terms of percentages, it's in at least Central Texas, it's in advanced manufacturing, robotics, semiconductor design and production, electric vehicles, things like that. So we collected that data and found there were only a couple of hundred students going into that sequence of classes that would prepare them for careers into the advanced manufacturing pipeline. And so we sat down with students, we sat down with industry partners, we looked at what it would take to better align students, to better align systems so that students could succeed, and came up with, a strategy that consisted of 4 pieces. The first was alignment of courses and instruction, and how do we go backwards from what does industry need to what can post-secondary provide to what is in our middle school and high school programs, curriculum courses. Second was strategic communications. We found that a lot of parents and families didn't really understand what semiconductor manufacturing is. How do we let people know what the opportunities are, what the earnings potential is? Third had to do with just pure facilities, because there is a lot of need for raised floor, clean room kind of space, but there's also need for lower level just 3D printers, things like that. And then fourth was faculty. There weren't enough faculty to be able to teach these classes in advanced manufacturing to be able to prepare students for high-paying jobs. So based on these strategies, we set objectives, and our first objective was to get 1,750 students into the pipeline for advanced manufacturing. And fast forward, we've been working on this now a little over a year and a half, and we've now got 3,300 plus students in that pipeline. So our objective was 1,750, and we've more than doubled that. And we're shooting for 10,000 in the next 5 years. So that's a good example of, just by working together and having a strategic focus, we can move quickly.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. That's an incredible example of both impact and scale. And so being in this work for more than 15 years now as well, your work really demonstrates the possibilities by place-based partnerships. But I'm sure you've experienced what so many of us have experienced is it's oftentimes really hard to explain this work and brand this work and make sure that this work appeals to multiple different audiences. And your book talks a bit about this. So if you can share a little bit more about what defines a place-based partnership to you, and how do you convince partners, funders, policymakers of the value of this approach to improving outcomes at scale?
And it's complex. All of you all know about that, because what you're trying to do, what we all are trying to do, is change systems. Not change things for one student or 10 students or 1,000 students, but how do we change systems that affect tens and hundreds of thousands of students? And so if you look at place-based partnerships, I would say first is having a geography defined, because you can't have just one school district or one college. You need to have some sort of collaboration that allows you to scale and sustain the work. And you need to be able to have, we often use peer pressure. How do different organizations who may not have had the same mission or common approach come together and share with each other and challenge each other to be able to lift everybody up? So we in Central Texas have a region of 5 counties that we work with, excuse me, that is, excuse me, probably 90% of the students in Central Texas are represented in our partnership. And so we're able to then expand from there across the state, and then ultimately serving others across the country through the StriveTogether network and other partners.
Great, amazing. And here is some water if you'd like some.
Great.
And you might have some over there.
I have one too.
And while we do that, I'm realizing that I neglected to tell the audience something very important. We are going to have a chance for audience questions, and I was supposed to instruct you. I've seen those instructions flashing up about how you share a question for Susan. So in order to submit a question, you're going to need to open up your CVent app. So hopefully you all have that app. And I hope you're thinking of your questions as I ask a few more. I know this is an incredible opportunity to tap into the wisdom of a leader in this work for such a long time. So please be thinking of your questions as we continue. So Susan, you shared that in your book that in the early development of E3 Alliance, you had to decide whether you wanted to create an entity that would have an authority structure over education systems in the region, or you wanted to create something else. And you chose that taking that kind of authority structure in the region wasn't the way to go. Instead, you focused more on building relationships in the community and what you called the moral authority of influence. Looking back, what was the impact of that choice, and would you make the same decision now?
I think we would absolutely make the same decision. I often tell people that we have no structural authority over anyone to do anything. School boards do not report to us. College admissions officers do not report to us. Therefore, what's the best way to have long-term, lasting, meaningful change? It's by building relationships of trust and being able to use that influence to be able to drive action and drive change. So I often tell people, it doesn't matter to me if people love us or if people like us. I care that they trust us. I care that they trust us and so want to come together to do what they know will benefit students. And so influence is the way that we've worked. It takes longer, It sometimes is frustrating, but you just don't take no for an answer, and you keep at it and be relentless, and ultimately through influence you can drive, I think, more deep change.
Yeah, I think, I don't even know who to attribute this quote to, because so many have said this over the years of this work, but relationships move at the speed of trust.
Yep.
And I think if there's something that we know to be true in this work, we are only able to achieve impact if you're able to build those strong relationships and build that sense of trust in this work. So let's shift gears to policy advocacy. And something I failed to say in the intro is, like, we have been at this work together for a long time. In fact, I believe E3 Alliance was launched like 3 days before the Strive partnership, something crazy. They were figuring this out in Central Texas right about the time as we were thinking about this in Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky back in 2006. That's how long ago? That
Yes.
feels like a very long time ago. But in the early days, you were such a critical friend to shaping this network as we were building it. There were so much that you influenced, and so much that you would call us up and say, you all should not do that. And one of the areas was related to policy advocacy. You were very, very clear that E3 Alliance was taking, in the earliest days, a very apolitical stance, that you needed to stay out of politics to be able to achieve your impact. And something shifted.
Yep.
So I would love to hear more about, what was it in your work that shifted your approach to really not only leaning into policy, but leading on some pretty incredible policy wins alongside the other Cradle to Career partnerships in the state of Texas.
Yep, that is absolutely true, Jennifer. So when we started, we did a landscape analysis around the country of efforts that had been started, launched, some inevitably withered away, and what we found was that if something was the mayor's initiative or the governor's project or something like that, as soon as that person or party left and turned over, inertia basically took over, and the work would just fall away. So we wanted to be not just nonpartisan, but apolitical. Over time, however, our partners asked us, because we have so much data, because we had worked hard at finding objective data, they asked us to take a stronger stance, take more of an advocacy role, and try to push things that we knew needed to change. So for instance, we've been doing work in kindergarten readiness and early childhood education almost since our launching, but we would always say, hello, Mr. Legislator, usually it was a Mr. Please, make your own decisions, but please use this data when you're taking choices and deciding where funding goes. Ultimately, we had a very large, somewhat contentious discussion among our board of directors and staff, and decided that we wanted to be seen as independent, but that we had established enough of a reputation of not having vested interest in the outcome that we could start taking stances, and start taking stances such as fund more pre-K, damn it. And so we did step out and take on capital P policy, if you will. And when I first announced that to our community-based organization partners, I was shocked that we got a standing ovation, that they really were so happy that we were going to take the lead in driving some of this action based on our objective data that would bring us together. And so we've worked in the policy space now for 8 years, I believe, and Strive and Commit and others have been leaders for a long time, but we came to it late in the game, but I think have been able to prove that that's an effective way to drive change.
Yeah. So I am curious, this is another one where, would you have done that differently? Would you have started in policy from the very beginning? Because this is something, we're wrestling with as we bring more partnerships into the network and really see policy as the opportunity to have the greatest impact at scale. But are there things you have to do first to kind of get into that policy work? And I know I'm throwing this at you, but I'm curious.
I think it's an interesting question. And I'm obviously biased because this is the way we did it. But I do think that by spending time, and in our case it was years, establishing that reputation of trust and of not driving things from a political standpoint, but driving things from an objective. What does the data tell us? What does our communities tell us? What are, those with lived experience telling us? That by using that as the base for what we do, as the foundation for what we do, then moving into policy later, we'd have established that trust where we could then drive change more effectively.
Great. So that brings me to, and I do want to encourage you to be getting your questions in, because you're going to have an opportunity here in a few minutes to ask Susan some questions of your own. But, your contributions to this Cradle to Career Network, as I mentioned, have really shaped the network in so many ways. The theory of action, for those of you who, I know we talk about this a lot. It's our 6th iteration. We're probably going to have a 7th soon. I don't want to scare the team or anything, but I know we are thinking about that. We're learning every single day. We're learning every single day. But that theory of action came from the earliest partnerships in this network, really driving those benchmarks and those learnings, and we've iterated on it many, many years. So thank you for your contributions to the Cradle to Career Network over the years and this entire field of place-based partnerships. On the opposite side of that, just curious, what has been your experience as being a part of this movement as you reflect on that, and how has being a member of the Cradle to Career Network impacted your journey? And then what advice would you have for those? We have quite a few people in the room who this is their first Cradle to Career Network convening. They're contemplating joining the network or launching a partnership. What advice would you give to them? So that's a lot of questions.
All of the above. I would say first that the theory of action is really powerful. It is a good framework to use to be able to understand what are the areas where you can be most effective, because everybody can't do everything at once, but it's a good framework for understanding where you can be most effective. So that in and of itself, and the tools that come with it, that have been part of the training hub now, but have been part of the community of StriveTogether for a long time, are very useful. I would say second, though, is, and most importantly, and what we're here experiencing now, is the sharing, is just coming together and learning from other people and understanding what they've done and what they've failed to do. And, we talk about this concept of fail forward. Failing is not a problem. Failing, not learning from it, is definitely a problem. And these kinds of convenings are our chance to learn from each other and to be able to take those lessons and move forward in whatever it is that we are doing, whatever our priorities are in our own community. And the third thing I would say is the communities of action. We've talked a lot about, in the past and currently, focusing on a particular issue, because again, different communities have different topics that are important to them. It may be chronic absence, it may be middle school math. When you come together around a particular topic and a particular issue and drive deep down into it, it can share that learning deeper and broader more quickly. So that's what I would do, is try to take what you have in this opportunity for the net today and tomorrow, but then going into the future to build communities that can help you learn from others what to do differently, what to do better.
That's great advice. And I think thank you for bringing the fail forward up, because we used to at this convening, and this is actually, a few people have asked me, this is our 16th Cradle to Career Network convening. So this is amazing. This is the largest number of participants. I think we're at 687. Don't quote me on that, but so it's great to see everyone. We used to have a fail forward fest, where we would have a competition for who failed the best and learned from it, and then we would invite them on stage. We might have to bring that back, because I would say that this work is very much, we're building the plane as we're flying it, we're learning every single day. That's why we're going to keep iterating on that theory of action and learning from all of the work that you do. And so, Susan, I understand that, I need to tell you again, please get your questions in, because we're going to be moving to those soon. But Susan, you have a reading from your book that you feel, that we were talking about is particularly important for this moment. And so I want to give you an opportunity to read to the audience from this portion of the book.
Great, thank you. And I do hope that what we've captured here will be helpful. And again, we have copies for everyone. Thanks to StriveTogether for sponsoring them. So if you'd like a signed copy, go out in the lobby. We'll do it for you. But the book is divided essentially into two sections. The first half is vignettes about the wisdom that we've learned by going through this journey. What are the lessons that we can take forward? The second half is all about those case studies that you talked about. What was the impact that we had? How did we do it? Where did we screw up? Where did we not screw up? What really worked? How do we take forward those lessons? What I'm going to read is from the last chapter of the book, which I call Not the End. Our wonderful Texas has shifted very radically to the right. So much so that it's sometimes hard to recognize. Former governors Ann Richards and George H.W. Bush are, I believe, spinning rapidly in their graves. And then I go on and talk, if you want to read the book, about a lot of the particulars of how that's happened. But the political winds are definitely blowing against our ability to succeed in our mission to transform education systems through data and collaboration so all students succeed. Still, this is not the end. It's simply the end of my tenure leading E3 Alliance. We've consistently demonstrated that we can change education systems to help students succeed at scale with equity of opportunity. The shared themes and gained wisdom from our work at E3 Alliance validate the strength of democracy as the best, most just way to ensure that our state and country live up to the stories of freedom, agency, and compassion we want to tell ourselves. So the 4 lessons are: 1, politics is local. We want to have a nationwide, worldwide impact, but with the hearts of people, one community at a time, the policymakers will follow. 2nd, success depends on community engagement. People, particularly those most proximate to the given social issue, must see themselves and their agency in the work that you undertake alongside them. 3rd, data and the framing of that data matter greatly. We are in a time of fake news and serious credibility challenges in our news media. The result is that people rely on social media and fall deep into the well of echo chambers. But data shared in an unbiased, clear and repeated ways and wrapped in the stories about what those data mean for our children and youth can help people climb out of those chambers, because ultimately, relationships drive all nonviolent change. Relationships of trust, persistence, and time are the key ingredients of our work. We can make positive changes locally so that the color of one's skin or the zip code a student lives in does not determine their life outcomes. We can overcome our country's widespread and poisonous divisiveness by committing to work together on bipartisan solutions to address our many, many challenges. We can move forward with hope and determination for our region, for our state and country. It's not the end of the work at E3 Alliance or for all of us dedicated to education systems change.
Thank you, Susan. I think that we all need to be reminded in this moment what our contribution is to really building the country that we want to be a part of. And we do have a very important contribution to make in this work. And although some of us, most of us, I have to think about this all the time, is we may not see the change that we seek to create at the end of our tenure or even at the end of our lifetime, but we are continuing to make change. We're moving forward, and that's really what this work is about. We have to stay focused on the opportunities to move forward. So thank you for sharing your incredible wisdom with us in this way. And when you read this book, you will most definitely be as inspired and as excited and just ready to go as I am. So now I think we have time for some audience questions. And I think they're going to pop up on my screen here, maybe. All right. So from Noah Garlepi, what is the most effective data you've utilized to argue need in your community?
Oh gosh. You'll have to read the book and some of the case studies in there, but I'll give you one example that's not related to the pathways. So we've done much work in understanding what mathematics leads students to success in schools and to be ready and then enter and succeed in post-secondary education. And so we've done the deepest research in the state of Texas anyway on what courses correlate and drive better outcomes in mathematics. And so what we found, we did what's called a quintile study. This is getting really geeky, but we divided students into their performance 0 through the top 20%, 20 to 40%, 40 to 60%, et cetera. And we found huge gaps. So for instance, for the top performing students, more than 85% of white students were able to take advanced math classes, but fewer than a third of black students were placed in advanced math classes, fewer than a third. When we first shared this data, and Laura will tell you, we saw teachers, administrative staff crying in the room when they saw this data. And they were very moved by it. And in Central Texas, our local school districts came together and challenged one another about how do we use this data to leverage change. And so we implemented in Central Texas what's called an opt-out program rather than an opt-in. So rather than depending on a counselor or a teacher to tell a student you need to take advanced math, if a student was performing at a certain level, they were automatically put into advanced math courses that could allow them to be on college level later. But then we took that and showed success. We actually closed the gap between high-performing black and white students by 91%. And so we took that data and shared it with the state, and the state changed policy so that now every student that performs at a high level in mathematics is automatically opted out across the state. And so this will benefit immediately 52,000 students every single year.
That's great. Great. Do we have another question? All right, from Jeff Edmondson. All right. You're a backbone EDOG. What is your advice, as are you, Jeff, what is your advice to backbone leaders to succeed on in this incredibly complex work?
We have that many people, many organizations have what they call core competencies. Traditionally at E3, we've called them our best ats. What do we have to be better than anybody else at collectively? Not every single person who works at E3, but as an organization, what do we need to be absolutely best at? And so there's a whole series, they're in the books, but what I would say, what I would call out is relentlessness. Don't take no for an answer. If you know, if the data says, if your community says this is the right thing to do, that this will change outcomes for students' lives, then you have to be absolutely relentless. Don't take no for an answer. Find a way around it, find a way through it, find a way, some way to move forward, because you're not going to succeed unless you're absolutely nose to the grindstone, day after day, year after year, making change happen.
That's right. All right, I think maybe we have time for one more audience question from Morgan Day. All right, building trust in each other and in the power of our institutions to reform for the better seems uniquely challenging in this political climate. Can you speak to specific trust-building strategies in this time of community fragmentation and fear? Great question.
Are you from Texas, Megan? It is obviously different parts of the country and different states and different communities are facing different challenges, but particularly in Texas and some of the more conservative parts of the country, this has been especially difficult, and it's going to continue to be difficult. But we build relationships of trust, working with individuals and working with individuals at all levels of an organization, because inevitably, if you're working with a superintendent, they're going to turn over, they're going to go to another district. If you're working with a college president, they're going to change. Our board president just announced his resignation yesterday. So building relationships of trust with individuals across an organization, and doing so by delivering on what you say, on delivering results. Those of us in the education space often are paralyzed by trying to do too much or trying to wait until everybody is at the table. You actually have to move forward and drive results, and by driving results, people will start to see those results and will gain trust in you. And again, I don't care if they like us, I care if they trust us. And if they trust us, they will work together and work with us to make change happen, and they'll take their own initiative to use the data, to leverage it, to move things forward, because everybody in this space wants students to succeed. It's a question of how do you do that best, and how do you do that collaboratively to come together to change students' lives.
Thank you. So thank you, Susan, for spending this time with us this morning, for writing this incredible book that is really, it is, when you read it, and if you've been in this work for years, you're like, yes, this is exactly, it will resonate so much. And if you're new to this work, it is a roadmap. We like the theory of action as a roadmap. This is a legit roadmap with examples, fail forwards, everything you need. And I'm so grateful to you for guiding this movement, for everything that you have done for us at StriveTogether, and for writing this book to help guide the field. And because we are so grateful for your leadership, we do have a special token, special for you, token of our appreciation. Do you see these fantastic E3 boots? Oh. Well, Susan,
I didn't tell you, you asked. The other thing is I own 19 pairs of boots.
19 pairs of boots. So we did not get you a new pair of custom boots, although many of us wanted to do that. We did. But rather, we got you this lovely crystal boot to present you with on behalf of the StriveTogether Cradle to Career Network.